Welcome to the Redefined Podcast. All right, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, we're going to talk about tribalism and business and how those two things really don't mix at all. You might be thinking, well, how does those two topics even, what's even the connection, right? And we'll get into that. Now, in the last episode, we talked about the differences between an employee mindset and an entrepreneurial mindset. I want to really emphasize today that neither one of those two things is inherently better than the other. It's just a matter of personal preference. For me, I chose the entrepreneurial path and it works, right? It works for me. It may not necessarily work for other people. And in fact, it doesn't work for a majority of the population. It doesn't mean I'm right and they're wrong. It doesn't mean they're right and I'm wrong. It's just a matter of personal preference. It's not black or white like that. It's not either or. And in fact, what we're seeing more of today, I think, as people get into the digital entrepreneurialism space, is that they're doing both, right? A lot of people have to have a job or a 9 to 5 or some sort of employment in order to pay their bills and to have a source of income as they're getting their business venture off the ground. Perfectly natural. So you see, neither one of those things, having a job or running a business, is inherently better or is inherently right or wrong. I bring this up because this thinking, this either or mindset is really detrimental to your business, right? And I'm not talking about, like my business versus your business or the competition that naturally happens in capitalism between companies. I'm talking about when you have a conversation with your prospective buyers, your prospective customers. We have to make sure that we're not reverting into this tribalism instinct. Right? And that's exactly what it is, right? Tribalism is an instinct that's really deeply ingrained, has zero logic behind it, by the way. And that's why it's in that part of that brain that's hardwired for survival. My tribe is better than yours. My people are better than yours. I'm better than you. We see it playing out in modern society pretty much all over the place, right? We see it in the best example, easiest example, spectator sports, right? Football here in the United States, we have Super Bowl that's about to happen, but all over the world, something like soccer, right? Or football, as most of the world calls it. People really revert to this illogical, irrational part of their brain when it comes to spectator sports. It's that tribalism side of their instincts, to the point where, again, completely irrational, completely illogical, to the point where people will get into physical altercations defending their particular team. And it's just a game, right? It's just a game. It seems completely just nonsense. However, again, there is no sense there, right? There is no logic there because it's not a part of our brain that has logic. We see it illustrated in other parts of modern society: politics, government, religion. And I'm not going to comment on the geopolitical situation right now that's happening around the world, but I will say that in business, it's really hurting your business. If you're not aware of this pattern, it's really going to cause you to lose business and hinder your growth. How does this play out? It's this defensiveness that we fall into, right? When people say no, or when we get backed into a corner in our business, that defensive survival part of our brain kicks in, right? And again, one of the things that we can easily kind of revert to and access without having to logically think about it is the tribalism, right? It's I'm right, you're wrong, right? For it, if you're not choosing my product or services, you're wrong, and you're not as smart as me. Now, I know we don't necessarily communicate it, directly in that way, but if we are getting into this mindset, it's completely unproductive, because what's end up going to happen is we will communicate something that will turn that prospective customer off. Yes, they said no to you right now because they're not ready for your product or services, but when we fall into this tribalism pattern, we actually there's that potential to close the door for them, because we're basically communicating that they're wrong for not choosing our products and services, right? it's not that they don't want our products or services, or it's not that they think it's a bad product or service. It's just that they don't want it for themselves right now, right? Right? It's not a thing that they see any value in at this very moment. Maybe down the road it can be, but again, you've closed that door by saying they're wrong or communicating that they're wrong for not choosing your products and service. And of course, it doesn't happen necessarily overtly that way, but I've seen it happen. I mean, I've done it in the past, especially in network marketing, right? We have this. I still see this today. These kind of derogatory ways of describing people with jobs and employment, right? Right? We call them JOBs, just over broke, or we say, it's okay, that they don't join your business, or they don't think entrepreneurism is a path for them. We still need people to clean our hotel rooms. We still need people to be servers at restaurants, and we say it in a way that's completely derogatory, right? I was a server in a restaurant. I never worked at a hotel, but I worked these kind of blue collar jobs, and it's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad either. And I'm not saying I'm better now as I was back then. Maybe from a income standpoint I was, but doesn't mean that task is any less or any less worthy than what I'm doing, right? But you see how that can very subtly creep into your mindset as a way of you defending what you're doing, right? And that defense really, again, only comes when people are saying no to your offering, right? Here's really the root of it, and why we revert back to this pattern. And again, I want to continue to remind you that when we revert back to this pattern, there's no logic and there's no rationale behind it, because it is an instinct, right? It's in that part of our brain that has zero logic. We revert back to this pattern and this instinct from a simple lack of skill, right? And that simple lack of skill gets displayed. It's a simple lack of skill and insecurity behind that lack of skill. Right? Because of our inability or our ineffectiveness at selling, right? Because if we were selling better, we'd experience less no's. So if we're not selling well, it's a matter of lack of skill. We defend that lack of skill by reverting to the tribalism instinct and by saying, well, you're wrong, right? You don't want to buy my stuff. You're wrong. I'm right. My stuff is good, but you're wrong, right? It's an insecurity about not really about people not buying your products or services and not buying your offering. It's an insecurity it's an unconscious insecurity of your lack of skill, right? Because if it was conscious, then you can logic your way out of it and say, okay, I just lack skill. But because it's the fact that it's unconscious, right? You're insecure about your lack of skill and therefore your inability to sell, to create sales. You revert back to the non-logical part of your brain, your automatic and autonomic part of your brain that relies on instinct, right? All right. Simple answer. Get more skill, right? Get more skill. Improve your skill and improve your sales. It's as simple as that. Also, too, one of the quickest ways to pull yourself out of that pattern, of course, the first step is awareness, and that's why we're having this conversation in this episode. The second step is to remind yourself that, at least the way I see it, the core purpose of business is to solve problems. And if you are in this defensive state, and if you're saying they're wrong for not purchasing your product and services, not buying your offering, you're not serving them at all. It's a pattern that really only serves me and serves to protect me. If you're only serving yourself, obviously that's not a sale. You're already in, right? So pull yourself out of that pattern by being aware and reminding yourself that you're in this business. The way to generate sales is by solving people's problems, right? I'm not going to solve their problem by saying they're wrong. I'm definitely not going to convince them to buy my offering if I tell them they're wrong for not choosing it. But I'm also really unconsciously only trying to solve my own problem by doing that, right? So pull yourself out of that by just moving on to the next person, right? Moving on to the next person, accept the decision, accept the no, and be like, okay, no big deal. Let me know if down the road anything changes. Also, let me know if you know anybody who you think might benefit from what I'm offering, and we'll talk soon. Let's grab a beer on Friday, and then you move on to your next prospect, right? You move on to your next prospect. That leaves more open doors, and it keeps you focused on solving problems as opposed to being defensive, because defensiveness locks you into the unconscious part of your brain, that Cro-Magnon instinct part of your brain, where there is no rationale, there is no logic, right? Tribalism really, really is hurting your sales. And so to raise your awareness around that, if that's a pattern and a behavior that you see yourself, engaging in, then just work to correct it, right? Again, raising that awareness and then shifting the mindset to how can I solve more problems, right? So that's it. Tribalism in business really, really doesn't mix. It has no place. Tribalism in general, I think, is one of those things that we need to be aware of in our own patterns as a species, because it's causing a lot of issues around the world. But we'll get into that. In business specifically, if you can become aware of it, then you can go on to exhibit higher levels of intelligence and logic and maturity around those things, so that you can not only be an example, but as you grow your business, you gain more audience as well, right? And so I think that's a great way. I've always looked at entrepreneurism that way, and this is a complete sidebar. It's a great way to change the world for the better, if our mindsets that are driving our businesses are sound and are mature and are coming from a place of service and wanting to help society, right? We help society by helping individuals and helping them solve their problems. That's the root of the service. And if we do that one life at a time, eventually we can change the world, right? So that's it. Tribalism, business, don't mix. Become aware of that pattern if you're engaging in it. And it's really just raise your level of self-awareness and then work to fix it moving forward. So that's going to do it for today. Tune in for more next week, of course. So until then, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.